Small HBCUs matter too.
Let's go!
It's the Division II HBCU Roundup on HBCU Pulse Radio.
What's going on, everybody? This is Randall Barnes, the founder of HBCU Pulse and the host of HBCU Pulse Radio, in the building for another special edition of the show on today that is quick because we already done it. I want to share this clip from our SIAC Twitter space that we stream live on HBCU Pulse's YouTube. We've done it for the past few weeks leading into the end of the season. And of course, the SIAC football season is over. But we did one last space, and the topic of Ray Lewis possibly being a candidate for the open head coaching position at Morehouse came up. It's been a lot of chatter. You've had a lot of the AUC, HBCU aggregation pages that have been talking about it. And, you know, a lot of people are discussing it because they want to make a splash hire like how Jackson State hired Deion Sanders. And Ray Lewis has been rumored for a lot of head coaching jobs in the HBCU circuit post-Coach Prime. But it's a lot of opposition, and we can't forget what happened in Atlanta with Ray Lewis. So we talked about it in the Twitter spaces, and I want you all to contribute to the conversation and listen to what we have to say. Should Ray Lewis coach at Morehouse College? Or should Morehouse, in their open coaching job, should they get a more experienced coach or someone that hasn't had the shot to coach? They have a good resume and they deserve to get their shot. And Morehouse is a good school to rebuild that program in an already storied institution. Let us know. But here's how we thought about it. You're listening to HBCU Pulse Radio.
I took some heat early on in the week because I tweeted out that Morehouse should hire Ray Lewis. And I really didn't add context to that. As many of you know, Morehouse years. And just looking back over the program history, D2 hadn't been too kind to Morehouse. Freeman had a few good years, basically like its first four. And then it's kind of been up and down. And I have been someone to beat the horn and say that if Morehouse ever gets competitive in the conference, I think that will strengthen our conference just because of the Morehouse brand. I'm always talking about from a brand standpoint as it comes down to Tuskegee and the Morehouse. And I just, when I looked at the attendance for the Tuskegee Morehouse Classic this year, the attendance was set at like 2,000. Talking about a game that used to draw 25, 30,000 people in Columbus, you know, in Birmingham, now getting 2,000 people. Now, of course, people say, well, take it back to Columbus. Well, the attendance has started to slack in Columbus as well. And I was saying that I think we should take it back to the campuses to try to rebuild that rivalry, you know, thing. I think some of that rivalry is because Tuskegee has been so dominant in that game, and Morehouse has just been bad, you know, for a lot of years. So they have an opportunity now to hire a coach. Morehouse is one of those institutions that you really don't get a lot of documents that we can get on other schools to kind of know their financials and what they're kind of putting out into their program. There was some talk this year they had cut scholarships. I don't know how true that is. So some people question what is their commitment to sports. I know sometimes we talk about their team, we talk about, you know, their rigor to get into their school, but that when I researched that Wingate school, I realized that they have a really rigorous process for admission as well. So you look at what their GPA requirements to get into that school and to get into a school like Morehouse or Clark or Tuskegee. So, you know, it's like it kind of almost makes that excuse kind of invalid, especially when they're dominating our conference with a lot of talent from Atlanta, Georgia.
Hey, I want to say this real quick, D2, man. I know you tweeted that on Monday, and I was on HBCU Post. You know, every now and then I scroll through, and I saw that several of the aggregation pages for the AUC started throwing around the chatter that Ray Lewis is a serious contender. And I said, hey, is this a report? Because I want to put this up on Post. And this is true, or at least give us traction. And they said nothing. It's nothing official yet. So like they're talking about it. I mean, I don't know if a Ray Lewis would work. I mean, in theory, you want to try it, but you're coming off that Deion Sanders blueprint. Like, there's a reason why Deion Sanders worked, because it's Deion Sanders, like one of the best athletes of all time, charismatic, clean cut. Like with Ray Lewis, of course, you have the past that you have to deal with, especially within Atlanta. But he's gonna be graded on the Deion Sanders sort of mold, especially with it being Morehouse. Like, Jack State has a prestige of football. You have Morehouse that doesn't necessarily have that athletic prestige, but that's Dr. King's school. That's Senator Warnock's school. So people know about Morehouse. So I want to see it for the SIAC and for Morehouse. But if that really is true and there's real steam behind them getting Ray Lewis, I just don't know how it will work. And people would have to give them, at the very least, if they don't come out the gate swinging, 2 to 3 seasons in what's going to be, if he comes next year, it's going to be like a tough SIAC. You got Benedict that just was undefeated, and they're going to be back. You got Fort Valley, you got Albany, you got Tuskegee, you got Edward Waters. It ain't going to be as easy. It's not going to be like how it was for Jackson State in the SWAC. It's going to be a little bit different.
I agree with you on that front. But for a program that's as dead as Morehouse's program is, you have to splash some type of life in that. They could go out and make a hire. I know that they were talking about keeping Copeland, make him head coach. I know a lot of the former football players, they really want that to happen. And they were also talking about one of the assistants that's at Rice. He used to coach at Alabama, and at Morehouse. So those were two of the guys that they were, talking about. If you go back to when they made Doug Williams head coach, even though he only stayed a season and then he left and he goes to Grambling. You look at their hires and you say, like, okay, what has been the thought process behind their hiring? I understand what you're saying about the coaching standpoint. It's going to be who he surrounds himself with, but that's any coach. That's with Deion too. Surrounding yourself with quality coaches, experienced coaches that also know the lay of the land, and it's just the excitement that you could kind of breathe life. Like that program needs a breath of fresh air at this point.
But my question would be this: like, is the breath of fresh air Ray Lewis, or is the breath of fresh air a coach that can really get that program together? Because I think that when we look at Deion Sanders, we look at Hugh Jackson, we look at Eddie George, like when we look at those names, those are athletes. Like, if you look at Coach Berry, for example, Coach Berry had a great pedigree, first at Southern, and he comes to Benedict and he goes undefeated. Like, I think you want the splash hire and sometimes that celebrity factor of like Ray Lewis, and we don't go for, hey, the coach that can really truly build up the program and develop. Like that's what I really want to see Morehouse have a discussion of. Do you want a coach that's going to really develop that program, start a culture, build a tradition like Coach Berry, like that 1-0 culture and tradition? Or do you want that coach that's going to get you headlines and say, hey, I'm pulling these recruits and these transfers to Morehouse? Then, like, he leaves, and now it's like, well, Morehouse is like Cleveland when LeBron left. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you have to weigh that, I think Morehouse could win it if they just get a coach that can instill the right tradition, that knows how to coach, that brings in the right coaching staff, and just really gets those recruits. Because Morehouse and it's Atlanta. Like, I feel like they have to really think about that. The alumni, the students, the stakeholders, they have to really think about that. But I wouldn't be mad if they got Ray Lewis. There has to be a conversation.
Ray Lewis' son played at Virginia Union. So, I mean, that might be something he might be interested in definitely getting into, is looking at D2 football. Either way you look at, whenever you look at Morehouse, you got to always look at the fact that it is. Some of those people, guys, players that go there, they may not want to play football for years. Because, again, a lot of those guys that go to Morehouse, they jobs and careers that they're looking forward to being in, you know, I think that a lot of that trumps what they do on the football field. Like, I really feel like football would be, you know, second or third in those guys' lives. And I think that's the one thing that they're going to have to get over. That's the hump that they're going to really have to get over to make that program successful, is getting guys in there that really want to be there, a part of the program, 100% bought into that, and not so focused on the future and just focused on the right now, which would be their football career. So I think that's something, you know, that they're going to have to get over with that program.
The only thing I would say as a rebuttal to that, and I think we talked about it a few weeks ago, is that you got the Ivy League and you got like good football teams in the Ivy League, like, and they're not like ranked in the FCS like that, I don't think, but like I think Yale has been pretty good. You had like, you know, Harvard that's had good years. So it's like that's the same thing that Yale and Harvard go through, and we call Morehouse the Black Ivy League. I mean, you can get guys that are smart and they want to ball. I mean, you know, like I don't think that much of an impediment as we would think. Then the elephant in the room for real is that last season, and I know we talked about it ad nauseum these past few weeks, but Morehouse was good last year. Like, they were really good, not this year, but last year. Like, they beat Fort Valley. I think they might have won the Morehouse Tuskegee Classic. I'm not sure. I have to check that. But they like I said, they had the game of the year against Albany. You know, like they had games that just those players left, and it just sort of cratered, you know, and then they beat Clark Atlanta this year. So, like, I feel like it's just like they catch lightning in the bottle, like every couple of years, and then it dissipates. So I feel like you got to bring in someone that can continue to keep that magic going.
I look at Morehouse and I look at Howard, and I think they're kind of in the same boat historically, at least recently, the recent history over the last, 30 years or so. And if you look at Howard, what they did was, after they had Coach Flea, and after that situation wasn't going to work anymore, they went for a name. They got Mike London, and just so happened he struck lightning in the bottle. They got Kalen Newton to come. Well, Kalen Newton was already there, and then they were able to win that game against UNLV and get a lot of excitement. They were only 500 under Mike London, but it was, Mike London, it was a chance for him to, reset himself up in coaching again, and he left after a couple years, right? So then they went after another coach that had, a name, and that was the coach that didn't last. He only lasted 6 games because, there's some accusations of how he was mistreating his players, some allegations that he had faced at other places. All the while, Damon Wilson, and the same thing over at Morgan State. All the while, Damon Wilson from Bowie State is sitting there right under their noses. And so, you look at Howard. Eventually, they ended up getting Coach Larry Scott, who's been at the FBS level. But he seems like he's there for the long haul. And those schools, because of their academics, they do have a certain culture that makes them kind of unique within the HBCU world on a certain level, being private and having those high standards. But it seems like they finally found the right coach, as well as Morgan State as well. So I think for Morehouse, they have to find somebody who embraces everything that Morehouse is academically and can go into people's houses and sell them on that. And then they also need somebody, it sounds like, to fundraise, that can come in and help them fundraise. Again, as D2 said, we don't really know what their financial situation is. But usually when a program like that has issues, there's usually some issues about, how they're financing. You know what I mean? Either do they have enough scholarships? Are they, do they have a recruiting budget? All of that type of thing. And I would think that Morehouse, as much money as it gets for academics, I think the right coach could come in and pull the right strings and get them some funding, find some funding, some causes and some funding to get them their program more of what they need, because it seems like it's very much so put on the back burner.
Yeah, if I could just say this real quickly, I just want to reiterate. I know you all are talking about coaches, but it starts at the top. I'm gonna use Tuskegee as an example. Tuskegee is what I think latest USN News and World Report #3 HBCU in the nation. So I mean they're right up. I mean Black Ivy the same way as Morehouse. But I tell you what, you go a couple seasons with 2 or 3 wins at Tuskegee, you're gonna have a problem. I mean it's a culture. It's what that institution values. You know what I mean? So I'll leave it at that. I know we're talking about coaches, but every institution has a culture. And it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. You can be a highly selective academic institution and also be a very strong athletic and a very strong football program as well. But it depends upon, again, what is the culture of that institution. And I use Tuskegee as an example. Again, very highly ranked, selective, high academic institution, but also you gotta win football games at Tuskegee, or it's gonna be a problem. So again, it's what that particular institution values. So I think you have to really be fair to coaches. You have to be fair to coaching staffs, because again, they're not the ones that drive resources and the success of programs. And I'll keep reiterating that as an administrator that loves athletics, understand where the power lies and where the resources come from. I'll leave it at that.
You're either going to care about sports or you're not going to care about sports. That's what it boils down to. And if the leadership there don't care, those are the results you're going to get. Because I think for a long time, I don't know, and I said in the past when Stephen talked about Howard, I don't know if Howard cared too much about football for a long time, because I think the perception about Howard was they just weren't good at sports, and that's false. They just wasn't good at football. So if Morehouse is in a state where they don't care about football, they could make a different type of decision.
Also, man, what I just want to say on the coaching hiring thing, man, one thing I asked for is the recycle coaches. Like, I don't think the SIAC is kind of known for recycling coaches, and I don't want to talk down or talk bad on any coach that may be in here or whatnot, but I think the SIAC got to really do their homework, and some of these institutions get lazy and just hire a coach that just maybe got fired from another institution just because of what he may have done in the past or whatnot. I think it's some good coordinators in the SIAC. Also, I think it's some good coaches, at the Division I level also that just, they get, like you say, they get the Morehouse. They can do some stuff. I don't know too much about the Ray Lewis thing. I know I kind of played early on Twitter when I seen about the Morehouse job being open, and I said, man, Willie Taggart, that just got, from FAU. I know it didn't work out there, but this is some new blood. This is a new type. Like, this is a X's and O type guy that I think he would love to come back to kind of restore his coaching foundation. I think Morehouse would be a good platform for him to get his name back out there and get it going, kind of like what Hugh Freeze had to do when he went to Liberty. So I just think that's something that Morehouse really need to look into. But like I say, it's not, not the same Willis Taggart is the answer, because hell, there may be some good coordinators on these D2 SIAC teams that maybe can, ignite that program. But I just don't want to see none of these. I think it needs to be some young blood, some new blood coming into some of these SIAC schools, younger coaches. And that's all I have on that.
Well, I want to say this because I think I quote tweeted that I like Taggart better than Ray Lewis. I'm not gonna hold you, because he has a record of success. If he wants to rebuild his reputation, what better place than Morehouse? Like, this isn't a school where it's like, well, I gotta go there and I gotta suffer. You're in Atlanta. It's Morehouse. Then, the whole entire thing. Okay, we got to fundraise. We got to raise money. It's Morehouse. We talk about, well, the football players, they're trying to be rocket scientists, so we don't know if they'll play. It's Morehouse. Like, some of them alum are like millionaires. Like, they need to tap in. Like, what's up?
Yes.
Like, tap in, make it happen.
And even like you say, from the Ray Lewis standpoint, or even Willie Taggart, I think you get the best of both worlds when you talk about him tapping into his resources, kind of what Dion has done at Jackson State. Of course, Dion has built that thing through some of his NFL buddies. They have this thing to where I think a few of his buddies just donated $100, like the first 100 days to his, for Jackson State for the football program. I don't know if Ray Lewis can do that. I'm pretty sure he can, especially when you talk about his Miami connection. Willie Taggart know a lot of, assistants, a lot of former players. Hey, man, this is what's going on. Can we get, because like the president at Edward Waters, he talk about raising money and fundraising. So that's the big aspect you got to look at, raising money for the athletic program, because like you say, they took away some of their scholarships. What other better way to try to get some of that money back by bringing in someone that can raise or get people to donate to the school because of that coach, as I should say. So
Ray Lewis gonna bring the cameras. He gonna bring ESPN. He gonna get.
You think so? How much do you think is Eddie George doing that at Tennessee State?
But to be fair, ESPN's already there. They got a contract. They got a contract.
Eddie George ain't the same. Eddie George ain't Deion Sanders either.
No. I'm talking about. He said Ray Lewis,
but he ain't Ray Lewis either. Ray's different. Like there's certain guys that are more passive than others.
You're right.
But at the same time, like the SIAC has a deal with ESPN, and then Morehouse is Morehouse. So CNN was coming on campus before Ray Lewis was even considered. Like they did a whole special on Morehouse's academics. So if it's a football player, a football coach that comes in and gets Morehouse back right, like Morehouse is great at messaging. So CNN's gonna be like, hey, the school of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is good at football. So on Dr. King's Day, let's spotlight his school and his football program. They don't need Ray Lewis for
that. Let me say this. I don't know kind of the average age of the folks that are on this call, but I'm a native Atlantan, and there's a huge elephant in the room. You talk about bringing Ray Lewis to Atlanta. I'm gonna leave that at that. If you don't know about it,
big elephant.
Okay,
let me just somebody got shot up.
I'm a native Atlantan, and I don't see Ray Lewis coming to Morehouse in Atlanta. Let me just say that.
Yeah, you're right, man.
That's a pretty valid point there, sir. Touche.
President, but you got to understand Ray Lewis from Polk County, Florida, man. I can see it happening.
So he could go to FAMU if Willie Simmons get an FBS job. Facts. He ain't going to Atlanta. I forgot.
Yeah, because the first thing that's going to come out is the new is they're going to rehash everything that happened back in 2000. I mean,
when Ray Lewis went to the Super Bowl in his final season, they did a whole 10-minute montage about it.
Exactly. Like y'all can say all of that all you want to, but it is what it is, and it just that's a part of the baggage that comes along with him. And I know we have a president on the line. I know one thing that I was told by a veteran reporter a couple years back that the biggest thing with and I think it's I'm glad you were transparent about the presidents and then being responsible for what's going on with athletics, especially in the football program, since it's kind of the front porch. I think a lot of people, it's good that some folks are starting to understand that and embrace it. But I was told a long time back that the one thing the presidents don't want out of athletics is headaches. Is more headaches. Is more headaches and more fires to put out. Some folks who aren't as who don't see it quite as President Dr. Faison sees it. They're at the bottom line, at the lowest level that they want out of athletics is they don't want unnecessary attention or problems that they have to step in, fix, or answer to. So,
let me chime in real quick. But what if this could be looked at as a debt, paying a debt to society? I mean, I understand where y'all coming from with it.
That's what I was just about to say.
What if the storyline changes? I got in trouble. Yeah, this situation happened, but look at what I'm doing now. And I think that's the way Ray Lewis has moved his life from that incident.
Nah.
He ain't in Atlanta though.
He ain't in Atlanta, man. It's different if you in the city.
Whatever happened, somebody lost their life, right? You know what I mean? Like and to come back in the backyard, like that's.
It's going to be something that's going to overshadow all that. Like, even if it's a good decision from a coaching standpoint to get the image for the school, that's going to be something that Morehouse is going to have, or any HBCU in that area would have to carry with them the entire way as long as he's there.
And also what I'll say too is that narratives are powerful. So imagine if you have like a Fox News or ESPN and these different outlets, blogs, and the websites that are talking about that, where the whole entire thing is, hey, Ray Lewis is hired. He has a questionable history in Atlanta. And you have Morehouse, who is pretty image conscious. If you look at it, they're pretty image conscious. So you want to have to put out not only athletics but the PR department. Do you want to have to put out those fires?
Y'all don't have a big enough. Y'all don't have Morehouse doesn't have a big enough budget for their PR department and what they would have to deal with if they have Ray Lewis as their coach there.
Exactly.
They don't have it.
Athletically, again, if we're being transparent, they don't even have right now. They don't even have a sports information director. They don't have. They don't have a sports information director. And again, as Dr. Faison was saying, so much of athletics is the infrastructure. From what outside looking in there, from what I've seen, there's a lot of infrastructure there, despite that Morehouse name, basic things that they are lacking. And so until they fix those things, it's just little things like that it may not seem like a big deal to most people, but I mean, there's a ways to go.
So
what's the priority?
I'm always fussing about the conference website. A lot of our schools,
dear God, I'm trying to put together an All-American team and a defense and a Player of the Year, and they're not giving me anything.
A lot of our schools don't have sports information directors. I mean, Tuskegee went a long time before we got the one that we have now. We went a long time. That was one of the excuses behind how things went down with Coach Slater. I was like, but that's inexcusable in my opinion. Still, but when you start talking about these invites to these showcase games, like the Pigskin Bowl, you start seeing like the people on these committees. They start tweeting out like, what good does it for a player at Clark who they only had the stats updated for 2 games, and it's the end of the season, and then they finally put in at the last minute when the invites are already out. And so it kind of puts our schools at disadvantage. And today's point, when somebody tweeted me back and said Ray Lewis couldn't survive that first week from what it would happen from a PR standpoint, and I agreed with them because you would have to get on top of that narrative. And we've seen too many times that our HBCUs, like, we don't get on top of narratives before so I know one that big, we definitely wouldn't get on top of it, because it would be something that has to be really thought out at the university before you go out and make that hire. And so, like, I have been seeing Ray Lewis' name circulate. So if it does happen, I mean, I really hope that they have really thought that thing through and really put some effort into getting out in front, if you can, as best you can. So I 100% agree. Like, it would be rough on them to make that hire.
Here's another caveat. Even if it did happen, and people are expecting the Deion effect, that with Ray Lewis, you're not going to get that, because he's probably going to have to stay quiet with all the media attention that he's going to get. You don't want him out front at that point. So it's not going to get the same effect. And then you don't even know if he can coach.
Exactly. You don't know if he can coach.
And put together a staff. I think that's the other thing, too. Deion has been coaching. He has been, he's been eyeing this for a while. So I think he knows. I think people just people are just thinking you can plug and play. And I just don't think it's going to work like that everywhere. Eddie George, I think the jury is still out on that. I mean, Tennessee State has been, a middle of the road program for a long time. But I do think, next year will be his 3rd full year. So next year, definitely we'll see what he can do. But I think, I
think Morehouse got to make a big splash though with something. They don't.
They don't.
Type of energy.
They really don't.
They need a coach. Get a good coach. You don't have to make a splash.
And that was the thing, like with Fort Valley, when Fort Valley brought in Coach Sean Gibbs, a lot of folks were questioning it. Like we brought him, he didn't have head coaching experience, and look at us. Like we were second behind Benedict. You know what I mean? So like you just got to get someone that's good that can win.
Before Morgan State hired Damon Wilson, there was speculation that Ray Lewis had an opportunity to get that job too, and I think they made the right decision going with Damon Wilson.
Right,
get somebody that can coach.
I get that. Like I'm saying, yes, they need to know how to coach, but also you can't put Morehouse program on the Fort Valley level. Like it's levels too, like you say with this coaching. Like Morehouse need, for one, yes, a good X and O guy, but they also need a guy to come in some kind of way, ignite the alumni, the non-athletic alumni, some kind of way to make them to give money to the alumni program. Because once again, the guy spoke early on about Howard not being known as a good sports school. And he said, no, it's just football. Well, I can't name a sport outside of the men's basketball team here and there that was
the women's went to the NCAA tournament last year. They got a pretty good track team too. They got some good sports at Howard, other than basketball. Other than football.
Well, they're not good in football to me. And
they're co-champions right now, though.
They haven't been to the NCAA since the George H.W. Bush era. Basketball, they've made some splashes, but they have not. They can't get out of the MEAC.
Who are we talking about? We talking about Howard?
Howard.
Oh.
The men's are making.
He was talking about Morehouse, but yeah.
I was talking about Morehouse.
Oh, okay, gotcha. My bad.
Yeah. I was saying I didn't know if the guy said that Howard wasn't good in all sports, but they was good in certain sports. But I'm saying Morehouse, I can't name a sport that is just like they're gonna be at the top of the conference every year in contention for, you know what I'm saying, the championship. So,
but the part I'm like, why are we forgetting last year though? Like last year they were good. Like they were beating nearly everybody. They started off 0-3, and they ended up like in a really good spot. And if they beat Albany, they're in the SIAC championship, I think.
But you're talking about 1 year out of how many years? Okay. And I was just, like I said, I'm talking about when you're talking about getting these boosters that's didn't play athletics to give to, want more money to go towards athletics, because now we're saying that, hey, we want to build our athletic program up now because look what this coach is doing or what he can do for us.
Yeah, and I want to say another thing too, really quickly, because I just thought about it. Morehouse has a really good basketball team for sure. Their basketball
boys. That's why I said the boys. That's why I said the boys team here and there be in contention for the SIAC Conference Championship here and there. That's the one program. That's what I was talking about. Yeah. I think y'all kind of thought I was talking about Howard at the time.
Well, when you said boys, I think you because Morehouse doesn't have a women's team.
Yeah.
I think that
they don't have women, but I'm saying
my bad, man. I'll own that. I'll own that one.
Yeah. But they have other sports besides football and men's basketball. But like you say, nothing is not good because, for one, like at Morehouse, it's one of them schools to where the DB coach may be the track coach. The softball, I don't know, the male cheerleader coach may be the volleyball. I don't know, but I know Morehouse.
But in that case, we got to have a separate discussion, man. I think that becomes an accountability issue on what the administration wants.
There you go.
You're talking like they don't want an athletic program,
too.
Period.
Yeah, that's what, like you say, that's what the president talk about. That really comes from the administrator. But like you say, you make that hire to have everybody like, oh snap, Morehouse got this coach. It
sounds like they want to be Spelman.
I mean,
no athletics.
I'm just saying that's what it sounds like. Like, based on what you just said, tells me they just have it here because they're tolerating it. They don't want it there. And if they don't want it there, they can fix that. It's not hard. They can have a committee. They can do a little committee to have a debate on whether or not to get rid of the entire time.
I think people will raise hell.
They put a lot of money. But listen, they put a lot of money into the football program this past spring. Like, if you've been to Morehouse in the last couple of years, you go there now, like, for one, they got the brand new field turf. They got the brand new scoreboard. The bleachers has been, kind of resurfaced a little bit. It's still the same, but the press boxes, inside of the press boxes has been done over. So they're showing where they want to make a commitment to football. Now you got to go make that hire as your next head football coach. And that's kind of why I think they got rid of Coach Freeman, because like you just said last year, they almost won the SIAC. So he didn't do nothing to get in no trouble. So you mean to tell me, we're going to fire him this year, even though after last year we're not known as football, but we almost won the conference with him?
Well, I mean, he did go 1-10, so it was like, let's get him out of here.
About those facilities though, we do have to recognize that money was gifted. A lot of that was gifted to Morehouse by the Honey Badger Project by Willie Lanier, who has
and it was gifted by some NFL players that trains there as well, with Quincy Avery. Quincy Avery donated some money there.
Right. So it's they had some help there, but I mean, again, there's a lot of gaps, as you were saying, coaches playing multiple roles outside of that. Going through a whole football season without a sports information director. I mean, these are just people that in 2022 you have to have, and and unfortunately, a lot of our schools, especially at the Division II level, are just getting by without it in an age where, as Dr. Faison said, a lot of folks want to do stuff with HBCUs, but we don't even have the infrastructure to really take advantage of it. A lot of our schools, just for so many reasons.
Like, it's no reason why, to me, like, I'm glad Coach Barry is doing what he's doing at Benedict, because when you talk about going to a university that's in the city, or HBCU that's in the city lifestyle, you talk about Clark, Atlanta, and Morehouse being downtown Atlanta. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to get any recruit just from the state of Georgia, period, that don't really go to your FBS or your FCS school. Like, they really should have Georgia on lock. But once again, it's about making that right hire. Because Clark, Atlanta, and Morehouse, like you say, man, it's in the heart of Atlanta, man. People from everywhere comes to Atlanta. Like, if you haven't been to Atlanta yet, then, I don't know what to say about you. But a lot of people ain't been to Tuskegee. A lot of people ain't going down to Fort Valley, Georgia. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's Atlanta.
Let me say this about Morehouse, and I do want to touch on Kentucky State's coaching situation before we get off here. From the perception that I've gotten, from several coaches that have coached at Morehouse over the years, a lot of people talk to me about stuff, just off the record. A lot of them just tend to feel that people liked Coach Freeman at Morehouse. And what I was interpreting as them being uninterested in their program, they have came to me and said, no, you're wrong. They just like Coach Freeman that much. When you talk about that season last year, Randall, Morehouse act like they had never seen a football until they got to Birmingham and played us in that Tuskegee Morehouse Classic. They were 0-4 coming to that game, and I remember calling the DB coach, the former DB coach at Morehouse, and saying, hey, dog, we're going to lose this game. I went into that game saying we're going to lose that game. He said, no way, man. No way Tuskegee lose that game. Yeah, we're going to lose this game because it was just in the air. And Morehouse tend to like they got it together because their defense was strong. They had a really strong defense. And you can see, like, with Miles, even though Miles is a 1-9 team this year, their defense had them in just about every game, to go and win. So that Morehouse defense has been solid. It's their offense that's been questionable. And so when the offensive coordinator left and went to Alabama State and he took some of their offensive weapons with him, I said, oh, man, they're really tied with their hands behind their back this year. And it had been circulating through the summer. A couple guys had already told me that they had already told him, like, if he doesn't get over 500, this was it. And you watch as that season go along, it's just like they knew it was the end. So this hire is going to be interesting to me from whichever angle that they come from with it. And I just hope that they give him the resources to be successful, whoever they hire, because I hate seeing guys come into programs, even when I hear about Clark just not giving their full allotment of scholarships. How many decent men, decent coaches, good coaches that have come through Clark that could have built that program had they given them the resources. So, we filter through a lot of coaches, but like the president said, if it starts in that administration. So I just hope whoever they hire, that they give them the tools that they need to be successful in the conference.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so that's what we thought about it, all right? I know personally for me, I would like for Morehouse to go for a more tenured coach, a coach that has a little bit of experience play calling. I think that we shouldn't be seduced into hiring a celebrity for every open coaching vacancy. Sometimes you need someone that has a little bit of experience. But I mean, I wouldn't be against it 1,000% if Morehouse did hire him, but he has to consider a lot of things. But thank you so much for tuning in. You're listening to HBCU Pulse Radio. Make sure to follow HBCU Pulse on Instagram and on YouTube at HBCU Pulse, on Twitter and TikTok at the HBCU Pulse, and subscribe to our podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search HBCU Pulse Radio. And last but certainly not least, make sure to watch the HBCU Pulse channel on the streaming service HBCU League Pass Plus. We're channel 201. But thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, we'll see you on the other side.
Like what you hear?
Yeah.
Subscribe to HBCU Pulse Radio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, head to hbcupulse.com to stay up to date on what's going on in the HBCU community. Thank you for listening to HBCU Pulse Radio.